Welcome to the Woman's Connection. I'm Barrie-Louise Switzen, your moderator. The Woman's Connection is a program about events shaping women's lives and helping one gain authentic power on a personal or professional level. So won't you stay tuned?
Welcome. It gives me great pleasure to have our guest here today. She is known throughout the world for health issues, how to do it holistically, and we are going to talk about breast health and what you can do to maintain your healthy breasts. And I would like to welcome Susun Weed. Susun, welcome.
Thank you, Barry. I'm so happy to be here. Green blessings.
Thank you. And I'm thrilled that you're here too. I can't believe the number of people we know in common. It's really a small world.
It is indeed.
Because the audience might not be familiar with your background, you're not a doctor, so how did you transition into becoming an herbalist?
Well, actually, I became an herbalist because my daughter needed new shoes.
Okay, that's convoluted.
That is a little convoluted. I was in a situation as a single mom, and I was looking at how I could support myself. And basically what I was being told was I was supposed to go out and go to work to make enough money to pay for everything, including another woman to take care of my child while I was out working. And I thought, I don't like this at all. I want to spend time with my child. Her childhood years are precious, and I will never get them again. So I applied for aid to dependent children and became a welfare mom so that I could spend time with my child. And it was not a magnificent living, but it did keep a roof over our heads and gave us food stamps, but it wasn't enough extra for shoes. Right. So a friend said to me, you should teach at this local community college. And I said, I don't think I could do that because I don't even have a high school diploma. I dropped out of high school to go to college.
So how did you, wait a minute. What were you going to teach if they're suggesting you teach?
Right. So that's what I said. I said, well, and besides, what should I teach? And they said, well, they're just looking for people who are excited about something to teach about it. So I thought about it. I thought, well, I'm really excited about whole wheat.
Whole wheat?
Whole wheat. I am so excited. I'm still excited about whole wheat many, many years later. And I wish more people would get excited about whole wheat. So I taught a class called The Best Bread You Ever Ate. You Make It Yourself with Love. Okay. And we made not only whole wheat bread, we made whole wheat English muffins, whole wheat bagels, whole wheat cookies, whole wheat croissants. Right? We did everything with whole wheat, and people loved it. And then they asked me if I could do a homesteading class. And then they asked me if I could do a mushroom foraging class. And then I was driving to town, and beside the road was a very pregnant woman. She looked to be about 10 months pregnant. She was holding a baby, and she had 2 huge bags of laundry. So I did what had to be done. I stopped. I put her, the child, the laundry in the car. I took her to town. We washed the laundry, we folded the laundry, and I took her home. And we became very fast friends because we were both interested in wild foods. And she was married to pretty nice man, but he'd come home, he'd kick off his shoes, he'd put his feet up, he'd say, bring me a beer. The house is a mess. What do you do all day? What do you do? You have 2 kids, both in diapers. What do you do all day? Right? So she says to me one day, she says, I'm going to kill him. I said, no, because prison is even worse than having him for a husband. And after all, he's not that bad. He just needs to spend some time alone with the 2 kids to know what you do all day. She says, well, he would never let me go out to work. I said, what if you taught a class at a community college? It's just 1 night a week for 6 weeks. She said he might go for it. So she decided to teach a class in herbal medicine. And we studied together so that she could teach this class. And it was such a success, not just at the college, but in her home life, that they all went on a vacation together. And 2 weeks before her next class was due to begin, she called and said, we're not coming home. You have to teach my class.
So that's how you got started?
That's how I got started teaching herbal medicine.
All right, but wait a minute. Let's go back a second. You were talking about teaching a class on mushrooms?
Yeah.
Did you have experience in this?
Oh, I have a lot of experience with mushrooms, yes.
Okay.
And actually, I do a weekly e-zine at my website, susunweed.com. And in the late fall of 2012, I did a series of e-zines about mushrooms. And I called it a short course in mushrooms.
So, fabulous. So let's go fast forward. Then you created the Wise Woman Way Center.
The Wise Woman Center, yes.
Okay.
which is a space devoted to the teachings of the Wise Woman Way. You know, there's 3 different ways of thinking about healing. There's the scientific tradition, which measures and fixes. The heroic tradition, which cleanses and balances. Unfortunately, both are anti-life. And the Wise Woman tradition, which nourishes the wholeness of the unique individual.
It almost sounds like a Native American way of doing things.
Well, certainly many Native people think in the Wise Woman tradition. They think about nourishing rather than cleansing. So somebody said to me, well, the rain is so cleansing. And I said, well, you know, if the rain were cleansing, there wouldn't be any plant life on the earth. No, the rain is nourishing. Every drop of rain forms around a small grain of minerals and brings those mineral nourishment down to the earth and fertilizes the crops. So you see, the idea of cleansing is actually anti-life, and balancing too. I'm sure you know about the work of E.O. Wilson, a man considered to be smarter than Einstein. Many people don't really know much about his work because he spent most of his life devoted to ants, which, let's face it, does not fascinate the vast majority of people, except in kind of an adverse, how do I get rid of them way. Anyhow, when he got, I think it was 80, when he got to be 80, I believe, he said, enough small stuff, I'm going to write a big book. And that book was called The Future of Life. And in it, he talks about dynamic disequilibrium as being the prerequisite for life, and that balance is the step before death.
Oh, interesting.
So we never want to be balanced. We always want to be in dynamic disequilibrium. And the heroic tradition, and I didn't make that name up, that's what they call themselves, or did in the past, is so much into balancing and balancing hormones and balancing this with that. And so we always fall short, and we always feel like we're lacking. We always feel like we're out of balance. Whereas if we understand that we can nourish ourselves with dynamic disequilibrium, well, then we're not going to stop our movement and say, no, we say, oh, it's a dance, it's a movement. That's what life is.
A flow.
A flow. Right? And of course, that scientific fixity is wonderful, right? We're able to reach all of these people through this medium because of science and because of scientific fixity.
Well, let's fast forward. You've written a few books.
Doesn't work so great for health.
Fast forward, you've written a few books.
Indeed.
And one of the books we're going to talk about tonight is Breast Cancer, Breast Health.
Breast cancer, ? Breast health, !
What made you write this book at this point in time?
Oh, because breasts are important to women. And women are getting a lot of fear-mongering about their breasts. And many women don't feel comfortable with the possibility of breast cancer. As a matter of fact, when my book, Breast Cancer, ? Breast Health, ! first came out, one of my major distributors wouldn't carry it.
Because?
It's about breast cancer. And they thought that if they carried a book about breast cancer, people wouldn't like it. And I said, I tell you what, I'll give you the first case for free. I'll just give you that case. And if you can't, sell it. And of course, now they sell thousands of copies, right? So there's a difference between being terrified of breast cancer and doing things because we're terrified of breast cancer and being proactive about our health and keeping ourselves healthy. And in my books, what I'm endeavoring to do is to work with what I call the 6 steps of healing. It's a pattern. So that it's not just herbalism, right? It's, first of all, I also call them the 7 medicines: serenity medicine, story medicine, mind medicine, lifestyle medicine, alternative medicine, pharmaceutical medicine, and high-tech medicine. We have all 7 medicines that we can use. Which one do we need and when do we need it, and what are the risks involved in that? Many women who find a lump in their breast want that lump surgically removed and will not feel comfortable until that has happened.
Let's start with good health for our breasts.
Good health for our breasts.
What do we do to keep them healthy?
I love the woman who wakes up in the morning, walks to the mirror and says, "You're in good hands with me, girls." Right? Isn't that a fabulous way to start the day? And
it's
really
incredible.
Tell your breast that you're right there and you're with them. one of the real difficulties in looking at studies that supposedly show that mammography has saved any lives or, really detected cancer early, and it is very controversial whether or not this has happened, is that most of the time when a woman goes for breast exam, she gets the mammogram and she gets a physical exam. So the doctor actually touches her breasts. But it's a rare doctor who will do that for more than 2 minutes. Now, if you think about it, if you spend 30 seconds a day touching your breasts, and you divide your breasts into quadrants so that over the course of a week, you spend 15 seconds touching each quadrant. In 1 week, you've already touched your breasts as much as any doctor would have. Over the course of a year, you will have touched your breasts 50 times more than any doctor. And the Breast Cancer Alliance says that the vast majority of breast cancers are not found by mammograms, but are found by women.
Wow.
So you're in good hands with me, girls. Right? There's no magic thing. It's not like, oh, if you eat this or don't eat that, you will or won't get breast cancer. It isn't that simple. As a matter of fact, I met a woman in her 30s who had just been diagnosed with breast cancer who grew up on an organic farm and has never eaten anything but organic food her entire life.
So it doesn't really matter what you're eating or not eating.
It's not that it doesn't matter. It's that there's not a magic thing. There's not one thing that we can say, you do this and I'll guarantee you don't get breast cancer. Well, actually there is, but it's too late for us. Give birth before the age of 20 and you will be virtually immune to breast cancer.
Really?
Yes.
I never heard that one before.
We're steering our teenage girls wrong, aren't we? We're telling them not to have babies.
All right.
I almost count. I was, 3 weeks past the age of 20 when I gave birth.
Well, you're close.
So I thought, I was pretty close.
You were
pretty
very
close
close.
there.
All right, let's start with the exam, with the mammograms and the sonograms. Do you have any thoughts about them being good, bad, or the tomography ones, about people having them?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that because when I was researching for this book, I said, well, how much radiation is there in a mammogram? And I was given various answers. I was told, not much.
Oh, I love that answer.
I was told about as much as if you were flying in an airplane across the country. I was told, if you lived like in Boulder, Colorado, about as much as you'd get living there for a year. And I have a hard science background. As I said, I dropped out of high school and, had to choose between MIT and UCLA because I was a mathematics major. So I was not happy with those answers. I really wanted something measurable. That's what science does. Science measures. So the unit that I found was millirads, and 1 week at a high altitude in like Denver, Boulder would be 1 millirad. So a year there would be about 50 millirads. A jet flight of 6 hours, that'd be across the country, is 5 millirads. A chest x-ray is about 16 millirads altogether, and about 1 millirad reaches the breast tissue. The smallest possible dose of radiation from a screening mammogram done with the newest equipment calibrated just before your mammogram is 340 millirads.
That's quite a bit.
In fact, if you got a mammogram yearly between the ages of 40 and 60, your breast tissue would absorb more radiation than a woman epicenter in Hiroshima.
That is frightening because they say if you have family history of breast cancer, you should be having a mammogram every single year.
There are women who are genetically disposed to create breast cancer if radiation passes through the breast. And we don't have a test at this point for those women. So it's a bit of a Russian roulette indeed, right? And again, let me say, this is very controversial, what we are talking about. The Preventative Services Task Force of the United States, a U.S. government agency, I think it was about 3 years ago, in about 2009, said that basically mammograms were useless.
But we still are not required. They highly suggest that we have them.
Women disappointed me more than I have ever been disappointed by women, Barrie. I love women. I've devoted my life to women, supporting women, doing whatever I can for women. And I will tell you, when the women of America rose up and said, you can't take our mammograms away from us, I went, what is wrong. They're telling you the truth, and yet somehow you are going to cling to this. There are other things. Again, let's look scientifically at what is going on. Now, a breast cancer cell is small. In order to see breast cancer cells on a mammogram, we have to have at a minimum 1 million breast cancer cells. And 1 million breast cancer cells will look like a period on a mammogram, like a printed period in a book. So we start with one cell. Your average, if you can talk about average breast cancer, and there's more than 100 different kinds of breast cancer, but your average breast cancer doubles in size every 100 days. So 1, and then 100 days later, 2, and then 100 days later, 4, and at the end of the first year, 8 cells. Now, if you're real good at math, you can figure out it's going to take a minimum of 7 years from the time that breast cancer starts to the time it's big enough to be seen on a mammogram.
So what does one do in the meantime?
There are a lot of things that one can do, and there's something called proprioception.
All right.
Right? If you are, say you're driving erratically and they pull you over and they want to find out if you've been drinking, right? They will give you a proprioceptive exercise, which is to touch your finger to the tip of your nose with your eyes closed. Right? So proprioception means we know what is going on in our bodies, not because we're looking. All right? Some of us have had pimples in our lives, most of us, in fact, and we know that that's happening without looking, right? We don't have to look at our faces every day or feel our faces to find out if there's, we get a proprioceptive sense of that. And this happens with women if breast cancer starts to grow in their breast. If a woman is sensitive, if she has a meditation practice, if she walks, if she takes some time for herself, she will proprioceptively feel that something is happening. And there are several really easy things that we can do, even if we don't feel that we are capable of doing this. And the first one is to eat lentils.
Lentils?
Lentils.
Any kind of lentils?
Any kind of lentils. Orange lentils, black lentils, green lentils, lentils cooked up in a soup, lentils cooked up and served with rice and yogurt, any way you like them. Lentils are wonderful. I was teaching in Germany, a series to healthcare professionals, and the cook there would come and would listen in to the door, and he heard me talking about lentils, and he thereafter, it was a 4-day workshop, he endeavored to serve us lentils at every meal. And not once did we say, oh, lentils again. We went, wow, this is great. Oh my gosh, lentils, these are so good. So lots of recipes. We make a lentil potato salad, which is really fantastic. Lentils not only contain phytoestrogens, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but they also contain a repair kit so that they can actually go into the DNA of a cell that is cancerous and repair that DNA so that the cell isn't cancerous anymore.
And what is the time frame from the time you start eating lentils to the time it would be repaired, or there's no...
Usually 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
We see similar things happening with flax seeds. And we've done some really fascinating studies. We've taken groups of women and also groups of men who've had cancer diagnosed by biopsy. These are men who've had a biopsy of the prostate and said, yes, there are cancer cells there, or women who've had a biopsy of the breast tissue, yes, there's cancer cells there. Then we give half of the group a muffin that has 3 tablespoons of ground flax in it, and the other half, the muffin with...
No flax.
No flax, right? The people don't know what muffins they're getting, and the people who are giving them the muffins don't know what they're getting, and the surgeons, all these people have agreed to have surgery after 6 weeks. The surgeons don't know what they were getting, but the surgeons said they knew which people had the flax muffins because their cancers were either reduced by half or completely gone within 6 weeks.
Wow.
Now, these are early stage prostate and breast cancers, but these are strong scientific studies that we have done with a fair number of people. Some of the studies you have to watch out for. They're like, oh, well, all 6 participants. I'm like, we need a larger group of people to really see what can happen. Now, red clover is an herb that's widely available. It's generally grown as a forage crop for pregnant and lactating cows.
Okay.
Right, and it is my favorite fertility herb. But it is also one of the world's best sources of phytoestrogens. Now, there are basically three sources of estrogens. Our bodies make estrogens, and that's plural, not singular. There are environmental estrogens called xenoestrogens, that's with an X, xenoestrogens, and then there are phytoestrogens, which are estrogenic substances found in plants. All three of those come in two different varieties, which are called long-path estrogens and short-path estrogens.
I'm going to have to listen to this tape and write all this down.
And write all this down. Okay, but it's actually pretty simple, right? So when we're in the uterus of our mom, somewhere around the middle of gestation, around 5 months of gestation, we start making 29 different kinds of estrogen. And those are called baseline estrogen. And we make those baseline estrogens every single day of our lives. And those are all short-path estrogens. Now, what we want to remember is that short-path estrogens are healthy estrogens. They make us live a long time. They keep us juicy. They keep our bones strong. And there's no point at which a woman isn't making those short-path estrogens. At puberty, we start making the 30th human estrogen, which is called estradiol. And estradiol is a long-path estrogen, and it is to breast cancer as kerosene is to fire.
Ah.
Now, does kerosene cause fire?
No.
But if you have a spark in kerosene, you have a conflagration, not just a little burn. So anything we do to reduce the amount of estradiol will reduce the amount of breast cancer. So a woman who starts menstruating at 13 is more likely to be diagnosed with breast cancer than a woman who starts menstruating at 15. A woman who stops menstruating at 45 is less likely to have breast cancer than a woman who continues to menstruate until she's 50 or 55. Because menstruation is tied to estradiol. Estradiol is the estrogen that causes ovulation, and then that ovulation causes the buildup of the endometrium, and then if we don't get pregnant, that is shed as menstruation. But estradiol is the trigger for all of that. So the less we menstruate, the less breast cancer we have. If we get pregnant, if we're pregnant at all, whether it's a miscarriage or a live birth, or not a live birth, we get an exemption from breast cancer because we haven't been menstruating that time. If we breastfeed, that breastfeeding, at least for the first 3 months, will usually suppress ovulation, suppress estradiol, and again, we get a downturn in our cancer risk because of this. This is because we don't have that long-path estrogen which can feed cancer. Xenoestrogens are almost all long-path estrogens. They feed cancer. Phytoestrogens are almost all short-path estrogens. They fill up the receptor site. Now, because our bodies make 30 different kinds of estrogen, the estrogen receptor site can't be picky. The estrogen receptor site is a generalist. She says, looks like estrogen. Come here, baby. I want you. So this is why these environmental estrogens are active in the body and can feed cancer, because the estrogen receptor site is so general. Now, I'm sure you've heard of the drug tamoxifen, yes?
Absolutely. Unfortunately.
How is tamoxifen used?
It's to help you with the cancer.
It helps to eliminate the cancer, and some women take it to prevent cancer, right?
Okay.
But what is tamoxifen?
I'm not sure.
It's estrogen.
Oh, interesting.
It's a short-path estrogen.
But a lot of women who've had children who've had breast cancer.
It reduces your risk.
It reduces, it doesn't eliminate. It
reduces your risk. There is no elimination. There's no guarantees, right? But it will reduce your risk. So I said that estradiol is to breast cancer as kerosene is to fire. At the age of 20, a white woman's risk of breast cancer in the United States now is about 1 in 20,000. The statistics are different for Latina women, women of color, and Native American women. At the age of 40, her risk is now about 1 in 500. At the age of 50,
it keeps going down.
Her risk is about 1 in 100. By the age of 90, the risk is 1 in 8.
Wow.
So the older you get, the greater your risk is, but that's also because there's smaller numbers of people.
So
but even 1 in 8 is only a 12% risk.
In other words, to keep the risk at a bay, have a lot of lentils.
Have a lot of lentils. Drink your red clover infusion.
Okay, how often would you drink that?
I drink at least a quart of red clover infusion weekly. Now, when my breast tissue was developing, I was living in Dallas, Texas. And this was in the 50s, late 40s, early 50s, when the U.S. government thought it would be a really good idea to set off atomic bombs in Utah. And the fallout was all blown south. And we know, again, from Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that breast tissue, which is developing and exposed to radiation, is very prone to getting breast cancer. So I'm drinking my red clover as well as, and I talk about my anti-cancer lifestyle and a great variety of things. One of the most important things in terms of an anti-cancer lifestyle is to sleep in the dark, no night lights.
Well, what about all your different clocks and computers and stuff? Would they have that?
Well, first thing I do when I walk into a hotel room is to unplug all those things.
Okay.
So that I sleep in the dark. We find that women who work night shifts are at a greatly increased risk of breast cancer. They have like 400% more breast cancer.
Wow.
Let's go back to the phytoestrogens and look at this because it's very interesting. Let's take 100 women. Now, when we consume lentils or red clover, both of which contain phytoestrogens.
Okay, I want to talk about the red clover.
Yeah,
Go on.
Yeah. Then it's not like it contains estrogen and we just get the estrogen. We actually it has to go through a metabolic process to be converted into active estrogen in our body. And that creates metabolic byproducts, which then can be tested for in the urine. So we give 100 women lentils to eat, or we give 100 women red clover infusion to drink. And then we look in their urine and we see, did they metabolize the phytoestrogens? Not just did we give it to them, but did they actually metabolize it into active estrogen? And the 25 of those 100 women, the 25 who have the most metabolites in their urine, have 400% less breast cancer than the 25 women who have the least metabolites.
That's quite a number.
It's an enormous protection that we can get by wisely using phytoestrogenic foods.
All right.
And I actually talk about those at length in New Menopausal Years, the Wise Woman Way, because the phytoestrogens are so critical during menopause. But I do certainly discuss them in the breast book.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about that red
clover.
Red clover infusion. What is an infusion?
Good question, Barry. Well, an infusion is not a tea. Most of us are used to making herbal teas.
Right.
And a tea is a small amount of dried or fresh herb brewed for a short time. They say, hey, I'll have a cup of peppermint tea. We take the peppermint tea bag, we put it in the cup, we pour boiling water, we dunk it up and down a little bit. Maybe we add honey. We have peppermint tea. It's wonderful. Tastes good, smells good, eases digestion. Great idea. But it doesn't get from the herb the storehouses of trace minerals, vitamins, proteins, phytoestrogens, phytosterols that are in those plants. So an infusion now will get those things. And we get them by making an infusion with a large amount of dried herb brewed for a long time. So we're going to weigh out 1 ounce of red clover, put it in a quart jar, fill that to the top with boiling water, screw the lid on it, let it sit overnight or for 4 hours. Strain it, squeeze the red clover to get all the good stuff out of it, and then refrigerate that and drink that over the next day or two.
That's easy enough.
That's so easy, isn't it? I was just picking up my vegetable share at our community-supported agriculture pickup. And someone ran over to me and threw her arms around me. She said, I've been drinking infusions. I came to a class a year ago and I've been drinking infusions and I'm just back from the doctor. And the doctor looked at me and said, what on earth are you doing? You don't have osteoporosis anymore. You can't reverse osteoporosis. How can you be doing this? And I looked at him and I said, Nourishing Herbal Infusions. Go check out SusanWeed.com. As a matter of fact, at the Wise Women University, I have a whole course called Drink Your Way to Health with Nourishing Herbal Infusions. It's a community of hundreds of people who are writing in and saying, I got my husband to drink Nourishing Herbal Infusions, and now he's off his diabetes medication. I've been drinking Nourishing Herbal Infusions, and I don't have to take my anxiety drugs anymore. I've been drinking Nourishing Herbal Infusions. My blood pressure is now exactly perfect. You don't have to change what you're eating. You just add these nourishing herbal infusions to your diet.
Okay, how do you reduce the stress in your life?
Drink nourishing herbal infusions.
Which one?
I rotate through 5 of them. Red clover, which we've been talking about,
Right.
right? Loaded with phytoestrogens, and soy contains 1 phytoestrogen. But there are 4 different phytoestrogens, and red clover contains them all. Now, soy is kind of interesting in terms of phytoestrogens. It turns out that the phytoestrogen in soy, genistein, actually can promote breast cancer.
That's what I was wondering.
Because it's actually a long path estrogen. Right? As I said, plants mostly have short path estrogens, but soy and a couple of other plants actually have long path estrogens, which then can feed cancer.
That's why I don't eat soy at all, or tofu, or any of that stuff.
Yes, exactly. Whereas the red clover now has all 4, so it has that dynamic disequilibrium. It has the dance, right? It has all of the players in the orchestra, not just doot, 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 one thing. And actually, it turns out that if your breast tissue is created in the presence of soy, like if you're eating it right along, because it's being created in the presence of something that could cause cancer, it causes those cells to be more resistant to cancer. So it's wise for women of our age to avoid it. But younger women who are developing breasts might want to consider. It's kind of like taking a little arsenic so you can't be poisoned, right? So red clover is one that I use. Stinging nettle, which rebuilds and repairs the adrenals and stress-proofs us and gives us tremendous energy.
You make them all the same way?
I make them all the same way.
Okay.
1 ounce of herb in a quart jar, fill it to the top with boiling water. There are YouTubes. You can just, go and say, Susun weed, nettle infusion. And you can see me making a nettle infusion with my granddaughter. So red clover, stinging nettle, the herb of energy and stress proofing, oat straw.
Oat straw?
Oat straw. A woman came to me in California and she said, menopause. And then after menopause, she said, down there, it was so dry. It was like a desert. She said, think sand dunes and camels. So then I read your menopause book, that purple book. She said, I started drinking oat straw infusion down there. Now it's an oasis with date palms and dancing girls. So if you're having any of those kind of problems and from all the new products in the drugstores for vaginal dryness, I would say that a lot of women in the United States are having those kind of problems. Oat straw is your go-to herb for that. Linden, the world's best anti-inflammatory. It's the world's leading anti-flu and anti-cold herb, and not only a preventative, it's a curative for colds and flus. And I've been teaching my students for a quarter of a century that inflammation basically is the root cause of all chronic diseases. So drinking linden brings down inflammation everywhere, including C-reactive protein, so it brings down inflammation in the blood vessels, in the nerves. All right, so as you rotate through these, each one of these plants gives you its own unique precious gifts, but primarily they're giving you proteins, vitamins, minerals, and a whole lot of phytonutrients that we don't even really know yet what they do. And my 5th one is comfrey leaf, another rather controversial topic. We'll have to talk about that at another time.
That sounds good. And I hate to say this, but we've got to close. In the closing moments of the show, what would you like to leave the audience with?
What I'd like to leave the audience with is that you can take care of your own breast health. You don't need to give this to someone else. Somebody showed me a wonderful commercial that was made in Canada, and there's a doctor and says, you should do a breast exam. And then you see a bank of teenage boys with telephones, and they say, call now. Our representatives are waiting to do a breast exam for you. And then it cuts to black, and then words come on the screen, and it says, it's your breasts. You do it. You're in good hands with me, girls. Green blessings, everybody. Herbal medicine is people's medicine.
Susun, I can't tell you what a delight. Oh, my God, this is incredible. And thank you for joining us, too, tonight. I don't know where to start, but if you have any questions for Susun, you can contact us here at the Women's Connection, or you can contact Susun directly on susunweed.com. Look forward to hearing from you. Bye now.